Hello everyone and welcome to our Bet Yosef shiur. We are learning Siman Sadi, progressing towards the end of the Siman. We will begin with Tzif Kaf Aleph, Kaf Bet and Kaf Gimel, which all discuss the concept of praying behind objects, specifically the Amidah, the Shoneh Esrei. The Gemara Masechet Berachot Daf Hey Amud Bet teaches us, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Amar Rabbi Yosef ben Levi, Minai Lamipalil. A person should pray directly next to the wall and there shouldn't be anything in front of him. We learn from meaning that he prayed directly towards the wall. Tosafot points out that something that is kavua, that is there permanently, like a naron, a teva, something large, and ze'efsek. However, a bed, says Tosafot, is something that is considered a hatzitza. It's considered divider between the person praying and the wall. The Beit Yosef explains that Tosafot is referring to a bed in the olden times, which is used for sitting. At meals, they would lie on the bed like we learned on the night of the Seder, those kinds of beds. However, our bed, which is used for sleeping, is much more stationary and is not considered a hatzitza. Beit Yosef brings from Rabbi David Abu Darham, who brings in the name of the Bash, which is possibly the Hedushim of the Rivash, which we actually don't have in print. He explains that the Gemara is referred to a large object that has importance, and that's why it's considered a divider. However, a small item like a chair or a bench that's at the synagogue, maybe a small bench, not a large bench, is not considered a divider and it would be okay to pray behind it. He mentions that it would be impossible to pray in the synagogue if this was an issue, to pray behind a small chair. This idea is also brought in the name of the Orachot Haim, in the name of the Ra'avad. Abu Darham adds that the Rambam himself was actually asked this question. And he was asked, what's this concept of a hatzitza? And what about curtains that decorate the walls of the synagogue? And is it a problem to pray in front of them? The Rambam answered very interestingly. He said that the reason why a person should pray next to the wall is so that his concentration should not be lost. He should be able to focus on the tefillah. And therefore, clothing and other items that would cause a person to lose concentration should not be in front of him while he is engaged in prayer. However, the Rambam points out that it's not an isur. It's rather proper to be in front of something that does not distract you. And it's enonachon. His lashon is enonachon. We have to notice the clear distinction between an isur and something that's not proper. And therefore the Rambam ends and says that if a person is in a situation where he has to pray and there's something in front of him that could distract him, he should either be ma'alim enav or ma'atzim enav. We actually have two different girsaot in the Rambam. The way the Beit Yosef explains is it ya'alim enav, which means to turn a blind eye, so to speak, or to ignore the distraction. And the other explanation in the Rambam is ya'atzim enav, which means to close his eyes. If we take a moment to think about these two opinions, the Rivash, the Ra'avad, versus the Rambam, are they cholek or not? They seem to be coming from different angles in this explanation of the halakha of Rabbi Yehuda Marav in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, some say in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. What's the concept here? According to the Ra'avad and the Rivash, there's a problem to have something in front of you praying. You're supposed to be more focused. There's a Kaf HaChaim that says that there could be like an idea of a korban. There shouldn't be anything, a hatzitza, between the person bringing the korban and the korban. And that should also be the concept here. However, from the Rambam, we see it's definitely a concept of concentration. And anything that could make us lose our focus should not be in front of us while praying. Now, even though the Rambam says from the letter of the law it's allowed, and it's enonachon, however, according to the Rambam, even something small that could create a distraction would be a problem. Whereas, according to the Rivash and the Ra'avad, they said that a small item, a chair or something, is not a problem, it's not a hatzitza. The Terkei Moshe brings a discussion about tapestries of various animals that are on the curtains of the synagogue. He brings that Rabbeinu Ephraim allowed it. However, Rabbeinu Eliakim prohibited it and told the people in the town of Colonia that they should remove them from the walls in the Beit Knesset. He also quotes the Ram, which is probably Maharam Merodeberg, who wrote that pictures and drawings in the Sidurim and the Machzorim are definitely not a good idea, since they can detract from a person's concentration. However, he mentions that they do not pose a problem of lo ta'aseh l'chapesa. Now, the Rosh in a Tshuva writes that clothing that has designs of idolatry or other inappropriate concepts should not even be in the synagogue, shouldn't even be sat on the synagogue when you wouldn't even see them, and definitely shouldn't be in the walls of the synagogue. The Taz says they shouldn't even be in your home. And similarly, the Or Zarua writes that if a person is praying and opposite him is a person who is holding a cross, a Christian, and a person is about to say Modim, he should be very careful not to bow down. Even though his kavanah is for Borei Olam, he should not bow down to any form of Avodah Zarah, even by mistake. And the Beit Yosef adds, it's not just talking about Modim, it's talking about any part of the prayers where we are obligated to bow down. Let's look at Maran for the first half of Seif Kaf Aleph. Maran writes, Tzarich shelo yeh davar hotzitz beno uben akir, v'davar kavua kigon aron v'teva enam hotzitzim. Says the Rama, v'lo hashib mehitza רק בדבר גדול שגבהו 10 ורחבו 4, אבל דבר קטן לא השיב הפסק. Now the Rama is bringing from the Abu Darham and the Ravad that only something of large size. The Aharonim and the Mishnah Berurah brings from the Pri Hadash and the Mamar Barakai that from the Rambam's explanation, it sounds like that everything is asur, and even if something small is a problem. However, he says the benches in the Beit Knesset are something that are kavua, they're permanent, and even Maran would agree, because Maran in the beginning did say davar kavua is not a problem. We see here again something that we've seen many times, that the Rama doesn't necessarily write Yesh Omri, because the Rama could say that the Beit Yosef doesn't hold that there's an argument between the Rambam and the Abu Daram and the Ravad, and therefore the Rama brings his comments right into the Lashon of Maran, v'lo hashiv me'haitzah, as if it's explaining Maran. However, as we've seen, it probably is a mahloket, and therefore Maran is more machmir. Back to the tour in the Beit Yosef, what about animals? What about people? Are they considered a hatzitza? Now the tour writes that Ba'alei Hayim are chotzitzim. Ba'alei Hayim, animals, are a divider. The Beit Yosef points out that the tour does not discuss people, and we actually have a mahloket in the Rishonim about people. The Beit Yosef brings from the Mordechai and Ma'ari Abu Hab, who hold that a person is not considered a hatzitza. They bring two very strong proofs for this point. One proof is the Gemara in Sotah, which says that during Birkat of Kohanim, if there's a tall person standing in front of the Kohanim and a short person behind him, clearly the short person does receive the beracha. From here we see that the tall person does not present the hatzitza, and they say they equate both Birkat Kohanim and Tefillah as they're both a similar inyan. Another proof is the Gemara, which says that a person should not pray directly behind his rabbi, which we will discuss in a few moments. Clearly, the Gemara is only bothered by a person praying behind his rabbi, meaning to say that if it's someone else, it would definitely not be a problem. The Beit Yosef likes this proof. The Knesset Agdala says we even have a better proof. We see that Rabbi Yirmiyah prayed directly behind Rav because he was on a similar level, and again, it's clearly not a problem. Nevertheless, the Beit Yosef brings from the Sefer HaPili'ah, who writes that a person should be careful not to pray behind someone else. And interestingly enough, the Beit Yosef says, V'tov lahosh l'dvarav. Let's see the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. Maran writes at the end of Seif Kaf Aleph, V'chen ba'alei hanim enam hotzitzim, afilu adam eno hotzitz. Maran says that an animal is not a hatzitza, and a person is not a hatzitza. This is clearly not like the psak of the Tur. The Tur wrote that the animals are considered a hatzitza, and therefore the Rama makes a very interesting comment. He says, "V'lin yirad ba'alei hayim hotzitzim, ve'adam eno hotzitz, v'chen yirad svarat poskim, efshar denafal ta'ud basfarim." The Rama says that there's a mistake in the Shulchan Aruch, and that Baalei Hayim are Hotzitzim, and he would want to fix the Lashon in the Shulchan Aruch. However, the Kanhag points out that Maral learned that the deen of an animal and a person are the same, and therefore, just like there was a machloket between Maria Buhav and the Mordechai versus the Sefer HaPeli'ah, the same thing would hold so here. Just like the Mordechai holds that Adam is in a Hotzitz, he would hold also Baalei Hayim in a Hotzitz, and that's the Psak Maran. However, in Sif Kavit, Maran writes, V'yesh mi she'omer, she'yesh li zaher mizipalel aharei shum adam, v'tov lahosh l'dvarav. This is clearly the Sefer HaPeli'ah that the Beit Yosef says, Tov lahosh l'dvarav, and here we have a Stam V'yesh. The Kanhag adds that within this Shita is also the Shita that holds that you shouldn't pray behind an animal like the thru. So says the Kanhag, we have a Stam V'yesh, as we have in many different times, not only in the same Seif, in two different Seifim. Sometimes they're not so adjacent as they are here. Here it's more clear that in Seif Kaf Aleph, we have the Shita that allows praying behind Baalei Hayim and Adam, and Seif Kaf Bet, we see that there is what to be mahmir with. Seif Kaf Gimel is a continuation of the dinim we saw in the Beit Yosef, Habegadim HaMetzuyarim, Afapi she'enam botot, and nachon leipalel kenegdam, v'mikre lo leipalel keneged begid okota mitzuyad, ya'alim enav. This is the Lashon of the Rambam in the Tshuva that the Agudah Ham and the Beit Yosef brought, that even clothing that is not protruding, there's no difference according to Maran whether it's protruding or not, it's still a problem because it can confuse a person's kavanah. And if a person has no other option, he should ignore it either by closing his eyes or focusing on his prayers. Says the Rama, "B'lechen asur gam ken letzayet shiurim basfarim shemipalim bahem shelo titbatel hakavana." That's from the Mordechai. Ava begadim shemitzuyar alehem divrei tiflut afilu l'shev alehem bet knesset asur. That was brought from the Tshuvat HaRosh. The things that have concept of idolatry are asur, even if you're not looking at them. We now progress to Seif Kavdal and Kavhei, which discuss praying in the proximity of one's rabbi. The Gemara, Tefilat HaShahar, says, Al yipalel adam lo keneged rabbo velo aharei rabbo. Person should not pray adjacent to his rabbi and not behind his rabbi, and surely not in front of his rabbi. The Rishonim bring three explanations of this halakha. Rashi explains that if a person is praying adjacent in the same line as his rabbi, and even if he's praying behind him, it's what's called yuhara, it's haughtiness, arrogance, showing that you're on the same level as the rabbi. The Tosafot explain differently. They say that behind the rabbi is a problem because when you bow down, it looks like you're bowing to the rabbi. Seemingly, Tosafot may agree to the explanation of Rashi if the person is praying on the side of his rabbi. Rabbi now explains differently, and he says that if a person prays behind his rabbi, and the rabbi is finished praying, and the student is not finished praying, that the rabbi is going to have to wait, and it's not kavod that the rabbi should wait for the student to finish his prayers, and therefore he should give the rabbi a space and not pray nearby. As we mentioned, praying in front of the rabbi is clearly a problem, as he gives his back to his rabbi. The Rosh and Rabbi now point out that if a person distances himself 4 amot away from his rabbi, it's definitely allowed. The Beit Yosef and the Derek Moshe argue, however, if this leniency applies even if one is standing in front of the rabbi. The Beit Yosef says that even though he's more than Dalet amot away from his rabbi, it's still improper since his back is to his rabbi. However, the Derek Moshe argues, and he says that from the Torah, it seems clear that once you are Dalet amot away, it's a separate jurisdiction, and therefore it's not a problem. Beit Yosef brings 2 more points on the topic. He brings the Gemara that Rabbi Yirmiyah would pray behind Rav. The Gemara said, how can he do that? Person shouldn't pray behind his rabbi. The Gemara answered that Rabbi Yirmiyah was a Tamid Haver, and therefore he could pray behind him. Says the Beit Yosef, but if his back was to his rabbi, even a Tamid Haver is a problem because it's a bizui gadol. It's a big disgrace to the rabbi. The Beit Yosef also brings that Maria Buhab writes, that this Yisur of praying behind the rabbi is only when you are biyahid. Although when you are in bitzibur, and people have set positions in the synagogue, there's no issue. He mentions the concept of the Tosafot, shemikabel oto ke'eloka, that you hold the rabbi as if he's a deity. That's how he explains the deen. The Beit Yosef brings from the Oel Moed that's only according to his reasoning. However, according to the reasoning of Rabbi Yonah, that he causes distress to the rabbi, that he shouldn't have to wait for his student to go back 3 steps at the end of the Amidah, it's still applicable to Tzibur. And therefore, according to the Oel Moed, there's no distinction between Tzibur and Yahid. And Maran ends off and says, Unen halacha yesh lahosh lazeh afilu b'tzibur. The Beit Yosef is machmir, and he's not lenient like Maria Abu Abu holds that this is only an issue when they're praying b'Yahid. Let's see the Lashon of Maran. Seif Kavdalid. Lo yipalel b'tzad rabo, v'lo ahare rabo, v'lo lefarav. I'm skipping the Ramah for a moment. Im yerhik arba amot mutar. Now, if you read this Shulchan Aruch without knowing the Beit Yosef, you would think that harchakav arba amot allows every situation. However, as the Beit Yosef pointed out twice in the Beit Yosef, praying in front of the rabbi, always a problem, even if it's more than dalet amot. And we have to explain that what Maran means here, im yerhik arba amot, he means only for betzad rabo or hare rabo. However, the Ramah says, ayen yorei de'ah siman rish min bet sif tetzayin. Now, if we look over there, Maran brings the same topic. He brings the Rabbi Yonah, but clearly Rabbi Yonah's lashon is only for a person praying behind his rabbi and the side of his rabbi. Rabbi Yonah never mentions praying in front of the rabbi, and that dalet amot would allow it. Now, the lashon of Maran is hakol mutar. Everything's allowed if you're 4 amot away. If you read the Shulchan Aruch without reading the Beit Yosef, potentially there's an error in Havana. The Kaf HaChaim agrees. However, even though there are chokim, the Kaf HaChaim agrees that Maran is machmir, and one should never pray in front of his rabbi. Now, in the beginning of the Seif, the Ramah adds a yesh omrim. He says, yesh omrim, the kol ze lo mari ele palel b'yachid, which is the opinion of Mahari Abu Hav. Aval b'tzibur, im tak used l'shibato en lachosh im mipalel lefanav o aharav. However, the Ramah says, v'afal pi shetov le'afmir, ha-minhag le'hakel. The Ramah says that the minhag of the people is like Mahari Abu Hav, that they pray next to the rabbi, they pray in front of the rabbi, they pray behind the rabbi when they are praying b'tzibur. There's a Biur Halacha and other opinions which discuss if a person should be mahmir in this scenario. Says Maran in Seif Kafhei, Tamid Haver Mutalid Palel Ahore Rabo, which is the Gemara of Rabbi Meir and Rav that we mentioned. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will continue with Seif Kavav and Kavzayin, wrapping up Siman Sadi, which is the largest and the main Siman Hilchot Tefillah, and afterwards we will continue to short Simanim, which each one has one concept in the laws of Tefillah.